hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night, wherever you're at. I lead our customer organization here at SmartSuite. And I'm very fortunate to have Gareth Pronovost join us, who I consider to be a staple, a fixture. I'll go so far as to say legend in the no-code space, as I see him now getting up close to 30,000, I think, followers just to his YouTube channel with Gap Consulting. And the topic today for Gareth is one that he's extremely well equipped to handle, and one that's near and dear to me. And that's bridging the gaps between departments. I'm sure we've all been there. I'm sure we've all experienced the pains of slight miscommunications or operating in silos from some of your peers that might be in different functions within an organization. And Gareth has some wonderful ideas and how you can help lessen those pain points and how you can bring some synergies across teams, across departments. So with that, let's keep the chat going. Let's keep things fun and flexible here. Do you want to call out for any questions that you go ahead and drop them through into the Q&A section of the chat? I'll be monitoring this as we go throughout. But with that, Gareth, please take it away.
Thank you. Thank you. Am I coming in okay, everyone? Got sound here too?
Perfect.
Perfect. Awesome. Thanks for that amazing introduction, Rick. I don't deserve half of what you said, but I'll take it. I'm really excited to be presenting to you guys here today because, as Rick said, I think one of the most misunderstood pieces about what SmartSuite can bring to your organization is exactly how seamlessly it will allow you to communicate between your departments. Even if you're just a smaller organization right now, there's still a ton of value for you here because the way that you share information throughout your organization is going to dictate ultimately your success as you continue to build. And so what I'm really looking to cover here today is a bit of, for lack of a better word, a bit of a high-level walkthrough of what you can expect just in terms of how you can collaborate between departments. I'm going to be highlighting some of the key features here that SmartSuite has available that are unique to the SmartSuite platform, and really going through just an example of how this all flows down and how you can leverage these different features and get more efficient work from your team. All right, with that being said, I want to start off with actually a bit of a outline, because in my opinion, the best place to start any type of no-code thinking is always with a plan. Now, this is really simple because we only have an hour today, so forgive me that. I would speak about this for days and days, but we're going to go ahead and just drill in here. If I need to zoom in more, please let me know. But the basic overflow that we're going to be walking through is that we have a project come in, and this project is going to have tasks assigned and created against it. Those tasks will eventually get completed. When this happens, and this is a very common use case, once this is done, that is effectively our way of saying this project is finished. Let's move it into billing. And I've color-coded this because the billing team presumably is on a completely different department. And so what I'm trying to demonstrate just with my colors here is that this blue is happening in operations. Once the project itself is done and it moves into billing, now it's in the finance department's hands. These tasks still need to be completed. They're still part of the same chain of events, but it's being handled by different people. And so here we've got this is now available for billing. Therefore, we are ready to submit an invoice. And ultimately, hopefully, we collect payment on that invoice. So again, high level, but I always want to start off with just our plan here. And if I zoom out, again, you can see that we've got just a few different steps that we're working through on our operations team, and that's going to get handed over to our finance team. So I'm going to show you now how we could stand up how we could stand up this particular workflow using different solutions inside of SmartSuite. So high level, I've got 3 different solutions built. Now, one of the things I love about SmartSuite, by the way, is my little favorite section. I have, for the purpose of this webinar, brought these 3 components into my favorites. So this is a demo account, forgive me that, but we've got contacts and organizations. This is where we're hosting all of our CRM related data, like who is in our pipeline and how do they interrelate. I'll go into detail on this in a moment, but this is going to tie to our production and then ultimately tie to our billing And of course, these different solutions, because they are going to different departments, just to keep things simple, I've broken them out. One of the best features, in my opinion, about SmartSuite is the ability to link to any application. So in several other tools out there, we need to create copies of our data over and over again just to interact with it. And within SmartSuite, we don't have that limitation. And so my contacts literally live in one place. Here in my contacts and organizations table, or excuse me, applications, I have my organizations here, Acme through Echo, and they're linked to contacts. Flip over to my contacts application, and you can see, again, this is just demo data, but you can see that these folks are linked up. But what I really want to draw your attention to is that, yes, they're linked to an organization, but I've also been able to toggle on, is this person a billing contact? Is this an operations contact? Both, none, or whatever falls in between, whatever I left out. I think those are my only options. So we're able to just toggle this on thanks to these yes, no buttons. And this is going to allow us to, when we are at certain stages in our pipeline, we can say, hey, we know who this project is being done on behalf of. Let's say it's an Acme project. We know that we should be in contact with this particular operations person over there at Acme, because this is the person that we want to be interacting with as we are building out this project. But when it comes to billing, if we send the invoice to Charles in this example, it's going to get lost in the abyss. So we better know who the billing contact is also at Acme, and in this case, it's John Doe. I hope this isn't too complicated, but as Rick said earlier, if you have questions, if I'm going too fast, please drop it in the chat and I will do my best to answer as we go. So I've got my organizations set up, my little CRM scenario, but now I want to quickly share with you our production. Again, I'm keeping this high level. I've linked up to an organization. Now, this is what I was mentioning earlier, one of my favorite features of SmartSuite, the ability to link to applications that do not live in this solution. As you just saw, my contacts live somewhere else entirely, my organizations live somewhere else entirely, but I'm able to link them up right here because of the power of SmartSuite's linking capabilities. But what I really want to highlight, this is cool, don't get me wrong. In fact, I think this is game-changing. I don't mean to undersell it, but what is really powerful is the dynamic linking capabilities that I have over here. So once I've linked to an organization, again, in a totally different solution, once I've linked up there, I need to know who my operations contact is within that organization. Maybe I have a couple of people who are operations contacts for that org. Maybe I don't have any. I only need to see that specific information when I access this linked relationship. So just as you have in any other database, you can build this linked relationship. Again, key thing here is that we can link to data that lives in a different solution, but I'm able to set up these advanced settings inside of my filter. So I click down on advanced settings. If you're newer to SmartSuite, you might not have played around with this specific feature yet. So if you have questions, again, feel free to drop them in. But I can go into filter right here, as I've already done for this. And I can say, number one, I only want to see operations contacts where they are actually the contact for operations, right? If I eradicate these filters really quickly, you'll see I see all of my contacts. But that might not be helpful to me when I'm trying to, let me just exit really quickly. That's not helpful to me when I'm trying to find the operations contact for Delta Company. There's only one person who fits that bill. So I can actually filter it down, not only by saying operations contact is toggled to be yes, but also I can say this person has to actually match this organization. This is where things, in my opinion, are just insanely powerful. So once I've saved this up, let's go into an example, actually. If I were to set up a new project here with, let's say, Acme Company, and really quickly, let's pause and verify that we have the right information. I've got two folks working for Acme Company back in our contacts and organizations. I've got John and Charles, and John is my billing contact and Charles is my operations contact. Back here, I want to only see Charles, and that's exactly what I see. This is the true power of dynamic linking, and this is a feature that is only available in SmartSuite to the best of my knowledge, and something I'm super excited to be sharing with you here today. So again, this was all built based on filters inside of my linked relationship, but the superpower here in these settings is coming from the fact that I have a dynamic filter that's saying what lives in that organization that I picked over here to the left, this organization is going to dictate what shows up in my next field right here. So this is super powerful. All right. Now I've got this amazing linking capability, but what I need to go back to is this idea that as we go through the process of facilitating this project and completing it, then we need to get to the next stage, which is the finance stage. So over here, I've got a very simple application built for billing, and we can leverage the same key components as we demonstrated earlier in our filters. So I can say, for example, in my filter for linking to projects, that we only want to be able to link to projects that meet certain criteria. For example, maybe they are 100% complete. We can't bill, as we outlined. If I flip really quickly back to our map, let's drill back in. Complete all tasks has to be done here before we can send them over to finance for billing. So finance might have rules like the project has to be done before I can even see it in my linked relationships here. As a quick recap, here we have 4 different projects. If I don't have this filter applied, I see 4 different projects. I can apply the filter, and now I'm making sure that only the data that I need is getting seen when it's at a certain stage in the pipeline. I'm going to save this up. I intentionally left those filters incomplete so that we could actually put them together here live. So I've now added that filter. Let's go ahead and break this down. And now I will only be able to see one project, because only one project, if I flip back really quickly, only one project is 100% complete. It's my Delta project. So it's ready for billing. So now I can, in my billing solution, select that project. And now similarly, I don't want to see every single contact in my CRM. This is overwhelming, and I'm probably going to send an invoice to the wrong person. That is not going to be helpful at all. So let's instead apply some filters once again. Number one, I can say, hey, I need to make sure that this is a person who works in the finance team, or rather is a billing contact. So let's find that. I've got my operations contact. Where's my billing contact? Billing contact is yes. I've instantly now reduced my list down to 5 people because that's how many billing contacts I have. But I want to take this further, and I want to make sure that my link to projects contains, or rather is exactly, and we're going to bring in that dynamic filter. And now I'm going to, when I save this, only be able to see the billing contact of the person who works at whatever project we've set up here. Is this making sense? Whoops. No, apparently it's not, because I made a mistake. But the idea here is that, and I probably put my filter in incorrectly, forgive me. This is the misfortune of doing anything live, but we can set up a dynamic filter here, and I'm sure I'll figure it out when I'm done being embarrassed. And it will be whatever we're looking for will be filtered down to just that simple contact. For the sake of the webinar, so that I can keep moving on, I will move on from here, and we will just find that person who works for Delta Co. Let's find them here, Delta. The billing contact would have been Wayne Gates. So back in billing, we would want to filter this down so that only Wayne is available here. We can set up the amount for our invoice, build out our line items. As you can see, I'm doing very high level here. But the idea is that we can then only see the data that we need, as we demonstrated here with our link to projects. We're only seeing those projects when they meet certain criteria. And this, again, is leveraging a couple of my favorite features from SmartSuite. Number one, linking to any base. And number two, being able to filter down what information we see based on dynamic filters, which is completely unique to SmartSuite. Okay, that was one key feature that I like to highlight, but let's now jump into the power of teams. And this is a feature inside of SmartSuite that will allow you to share your information and provide onboarding within your organization so much more quickly. We are going to hop into our workspace administration settings to really dial into teams. Now, again, this is a demo account, so forgive me anything that you might see here. We have currently 2 teams set up. We have sales and finance, and we see the members of those teams. We can go in here and edit the different folks who are given access to these specific teams right here. We can also set up additional teams. Now, the power of this is that when we save our applications and we apply various permissions to our different solutions, we can say that specific teams have access to solutions. Therefore, when we add new members to our SmartSuite workspace and they are assigned to specific teams, they are instantly granted access to all of the solutions that those teams already have permission to. So let's take an example. I already have a finance team, but I don't have an operations team, so I can build one. Just name the team, set it to active, of course, and I'll bring over anyone who is going to need to be a member of this team. Now I have this live version of operations. Note that I can come in here at any point in time and remove people or add new people. And again, if I were in the scenario where I were bringing in new members, if I were managing members and adding new folks here, when I get the opportunity, let me just bring in a new example person. Once I've brought this new person in, I get to, number one, assign their role, but also assign them to teams. So this means that as I onboard new folks to my operations or to my finance team or to my sales team or whatever other teams I have, they're going to instantly be getting access to what these are shared with. So let's take a look at how this all works and shakes out. Now that I've built my new operations team here within SmartSuite, I'm going to drill into my operations or my production solution and set my permissions up. So I can come into the permissions for this solution and drill into only teams having specific access. And I can set this up to say, this is the production base, which should only be shared with our operations team. So let's go ahead and make that selection here. Now, of course, solution managers and workspace admins will continue to have access. But in terms of the folks on our organization who have more limited access to SmartSuite as a whole, they are going to be driven by who is on this team. So once I'm happy with this, I can set that up. And as I was mentioning, now when I onboard new members to our operations, they are going to instantly get access to this solution and the respective components there within. All right, beyond this, one other thing that I really want to highlight about SmartSuite in particular is the fact that the field level permissions give us even more granular control over what people within our organization see. So yes, we were able to control this information at the solution level, as you just saw. I was able to come in and say, hey, certain departments have access. Furthermore, I can do this at the application level. And I think this is an overlooked feature within SmartSuite and something that will give you a lot more control over how you build out your solutions and run your organization. As you grant permission, perhaps there are people doing the literal day-to-day operations of moving these projects forward. They might not need to see the project's level. They might only need to see the day-to-day tasks, in which case you can limit their access here to override the solution permissions and deny them access to projects, or conversely, grant them specifically access to the project tasks. Now, one thing to note is that SmartSuite permissions are, as they say, optimistic. So if you have competing permissions that you've granted to somebody, they are going to receive the highest level of permission. So be thoughtful about how you share and what different levels of permission you grant here. Looking over at my notes, I also want to talk about our field level permissions inside of SmartSuite. So if there is information within, let's say, an application, so here inside of projects, I want to share projects with somebody. Actually, let me drill in a different level down. Let me go into my invoices here, my billing. Let's imagine that this was part of my finance team. I could come in easily, add permissions here, as I've already done, and granted access to the finance team. But maybe I don't want the amounts of money to be seen by everybody. Maybe only specific people on the finance team need to see amounts, because there are people, for example, whose job it is to make sure that we have collected anything that we've sent. They don't necessarily need to know what the amount of that is per se. They just need to know that this invoice was sent on this day. I'm noticing now that I missed a date due, so I better add a date really quickly. Let's bring that in. This will be date due. And so if this was sent on the 8th and it was due on the 11th, these are dates are terrible examples, sorry. Let's say it was sent on the 3rd and it was due on the 17th of July. And here we are today on August 2nd. If I were working in this department as accounts receivable, I would be looking to follow up on this particular invoice and figure out why it has not yet been collected. Maybe I don't need to see the fact that it's a $50,000 invoice, or maybe I do. In the case where I don't, this specific field also, or rather all fields, I should say, have their own field level permissions inside the tool. So by default, anyone who is a member of the app can see the field, but I can get much more granular and say specific people, selected team members can see it. Nobody can see it except for solution managers. Everyone except certain people can see it. You get the idea. Great level of granularity within the tool. These are the key features inside a SmartSuite that are going to allow you to seamlessly pass information through your different departments. So let me pause right now and see what questions we have, because I feel like I've been talking at everyone for quite a while. Rick, how are we doing over there in the chat?
There's just so much gold that you're serving up. We're just enjoying it. And I love that, the way that you describe it. So it's like you're keeping people focused on their lanes, but you're also having them open up lanes for other folks.
Exactly.
A few questions here. Blake had a question around, if I'm an organization that's already utilizing several different platforms in my lead to cash process, i.e. HubSpot, Salesforce, Intact, what's an entry-level way for me to incorporate SmartSuite to add efficiency?
Man, okay. So number one, I'm thinking find that low-hanging fruit where you don't yet have a solution answering your questions, right? Or solving your problems. There's very likely a repetitive task that you do over and over again, or that a particular team does repetitively. Find that, as I like to think of that, as the low-hanging fruit. And it's a typical strategy of a land and expand, if you've heard folks say that before, where you find that one or two things where it's like, there's not, let me rewind a little bit in this answer, sorry. A lot of software that's out of the box is built for a specific purpose. The key value or one of the many key values of SmartSuite is that it's malleable. You can build it to serve your specific needs, as you see here, just in this example, that, by the way, got stood up in under an hour. So the idea here is build it in a way, or rather leverage the power of SmartSuite, which is you have a unique workflow that if you were to look at some out-of-the-box software options, they probably don't solve like natively within their tool. Find one of those examples, solve that specific workflow or problem with SmartSuite, and I think you're just going to naturally see that more and more departments start using it as you share it. Like it's a classic example, and it's something we see all the time, where one person brings it into an organization, and before you know it, 50 people are using it. Everyone loves it. Everyone's building their own stuff in it. And the value is evident, but you have to get over the initial hump, right? Did I answer the question?
I think you did. Yeah. Echoing that point, it's all about focus. So starting with a single use case, when people tend to get into a tool like SmartSuite, they get excited about the possibilities and they start thinking about all these big swing type ideas. Get that one use case that is a pretty critical one to the business. Once you have that optimized in SmartSuite, then you think about the tangential workflows or processes that tie into that, as opposed to let's go pick another random one. So I'm doing X, That's for our marketing team. The sales team tends to touch this workflow here. Okay, let's approach that workflow. And that's how you can go horizontal across the organization, just as Gareth said.
Love it.
Awesome. Thanks for that question, Blake. I know that's one that's probably top of mind for most folks. With the specific tools that you mentioned there, feel free to reach out to us, the SmartSuite team, directly. These are ones that we're super familiar with: HubSpot, Salesforce, Intact, and how you can bring those into your ecosystem. We like to remain agnostic. So whatever tools you're using, let's bring them to the party. Nicholas' question here: is there a specific reason for keeping these solutions separated and not including them in one solution as 5 different apps?
Yes, what a good question. So the flexibility of SmartSuite, if it does not have to be in broken up apps, because you can toggle permissions at the application level, at the solution level, as I was mentioning, right? So the reason that I like to break things into different apps is because, the reason I break applications into various solutions is because a solution, the definition of it is a collection of apps that serve a similar or specific workflow or purpose. And so when you have everything in one application, I think it can get a little bit overwhelming. You've got way too much information, and it's not necessary to see all of that information at the same time. Maybe you, as a builder, as the solution manager, would want to see that, but generally speaking, the folks who are utilizing the tool think in terms of their specific process or their specific needs or requirements. And so I personally try to break applications out so that they are meeting that initial definition, right? Which is, again, a solution is a collection of applications that work towards a specific workflow. So it's not, I wouldn't say it's wrong if you put it all in the same place, right? Because you could definitely still get the same functionality. You could still limit permissions to what people see and all of that. You could technically have it all on one place. Yeah. Rick, do you have anything you want to add to that?
That's spot on. The perfect example for me is when you're talking about a CRM or a store of data that's powering other workflows. If you're using that set of data in multiple places, which might be in multiple solutions, that generally then deserves to sit in its own solution, right? So what we're trying to do here is safeguard against duplicating, right? You certainly don't want your internal employee directory in 3 different places being leveraged across. That just creates the mess that there's a reason why folks get out of spreadsheets and move into something like this, because of this organization and the ability to relate data. Powerful question though, Nicholas, is one that comes up all the time. And to ease the air for folks that are maybe feeling a little bit of heartburn in setting this up, as most of us don't come from database architecture backgrounds, there are people like Gareth that can certainly provide that consultation in just getting you set up, getting your groundwork laid out and getting the foundation set up and how things should be structured is critical to just take a little consultation up front, as opposed to trying to figure it all out on yourself and then maybe having to rebuild it later on. Our community is also great for that, asking those questions around, I'm thinking of starting here, any guidance? Cool. This question I love is the power of SmartSuite creating a solution like a CRM and then dynamically linking to another solution using your templates if desired. So just your general take on like where the key value is in getting started in SmartSuite there, Gareth.
The key value, in my opinion, of SmartSuite is that, and I think I said this earlier, it allows you to build custom software, basically. You can think of it as standing up. All right, let me rewind a lot. 10-ish years ago, I was in school, grad school, thinking, and it was business school, and I was thinking about all these different ideas and business ideas, and oh man, this would be so cool. And I always got to a point with all these ideas where I was like, man, I need to build some custom software for that. And I don't know how to code. Should I go back to school for another 10 years and learn how to code? No, I don't want to do that. And so I felt like in a lot of ways, all these business ideas, all these concepts I was coming up with were just never going to get launched. And I feel like the value of a tool like SmartSuite, whether you're in idea phase or you're 20 years in business, it allows you to build custom software without needing to know how to code. If I were still in business school coming up with those ideas today, I could be standing up MVPs, minimum viable products, within a couple of hours using SmartSuite. And that's where I think the value of SmartSuite lies, is solving specific workflow problems, allowing you to collect your data in exactly the way that you need your data to be collected. And no two CRMs are the same. And I think that's where your typical Salesforce or Copper or whatever, and I don't mean to talk badly about those CRM tools, they're amazing tools. The issue that I have with them is that out of the box, you're stuck with, this is how we built it and this is how it works. When you're working with a tool like SmartSuite, it's how you build it. And you might change your mind tomorrow and decide that the way you built it isn't how you want to build it going forward. No problem, change it. That's the power of a tool like this, because it allows you to capture your data and link it up with whatever else you need, but in a way that is unique to your process. Rick, what do you think?
Spot on. Can't even add to that. Yeah. The dynamic ability for you to not have to work to a tool and adjust your workflows and your business processes to a tool, instead have that tool flex to your vision and the way that things are being done and how you want them to be done. That's the big difference in leveraging a tool like SmartSuite versus an out-of-the-box point solution. What level of flexibility do you want? Some people actually like to be told, here's how we do things, and I'll go ahead and follow that process. But the Lego builders, the creatives of the world that have a vision of how they're currently doing things, SmartSuite becomes that moldable tool. Two others, and then quick ones here, and then I'll let you get back into it. Gareth, Abid has a question around, are these features available on free version? Just about everything that is being shared here is available on free. A stance that we've taken from the beginning, we don't do a whole lot of feature gating in the sense of you need to be on this plan to get this. You need to be, there are a few exceptions to that. One would be the level of granularity in permissioning. So when you're talking about field level permissions or getting down to app level permissions, or deep dive into those permissioning levels, some of those would only be available on certain paid plans. But for the most part, the vision here is that you're able to build your workflows and operate here, especially if you're a small business or a solo operation, to be able to do it on free. And then leaning in for the support and things like that, where perhaps you want to upgrade because you want to support us or you need access to more records or more automations. As you scale up, we're here to flex up with you, but you can do a whole lot on the free version to start.
100%.
And then Kamranor, if I'm pronouncing your name right, what type of businesses do you feel see the value of SmartSuite right off the bat? And the background for Kamranor is come from a SaaS sales background. So my ICP is other SaaS companies. I'm wondering why they would choose SmartSuite over having something built in-house. And which department have you seen be the lowest barrier to entry? Loaded question. I've got
so many layers.
Phew.
I'm curious to know what you're going to say here, Rick, but I'll give it a swing.
Please go for it.
So yeah, for us, I think where we see the easiest adoption is earlier on in the business process. So I'm thinking like lead flow, marketing. That's where we tend to see a lot of folks pick it up early. But what I think is like the real value when you get deeper in the organization is further down the pipeline, when you've got operations using it, when you're passing information to your other departments that are not top of funnel. But it seems, I don't know if your experience aligns with this, Rick, but what I tend to see is sales and marketing folk reaching out initially and adopting the tool. And then again, as I mentioned earlier, once it expands within the organization, that's when you get like nth degree exponential gains. What are your thoughts there?
That's exactly it. Our data shows that as well in terms of some of the largest use cases or the ICPs that would be driving the initial adoption of SmartSuite. That being said, you name a function, you name a role in a business, in any industry across the world, and I'm sure I can give you an example of somebody that is using it in some capacity there. And that's the whole point, is it's meant to be flexible for any function to get value. To Garrett's point about operations entering the picture, I also find our customers that are adopting this the most progressively are the ones, it's less about the person's role and more about their mindset. If there's somebody that cares about process, if they care about improving things and streamlining, they're going to love it. And they're going to want to bring other people involved because it's almost like they're a conductor of what's happening. They find these inefficiencies, and instead of bolting on 3 or 4 different point solutions to solve those things, they can do it cohesively just through SmartSuite, for example, as Patrick alluded to. Really kind statement there, Patrick, in terms of SmartSuite can do just about everything. We like to think so. And also there are things that, flat out we can't do. And that's where Enter Make or Zapier or these other tools that will allow you to create these really seamless connection points in order to bring data in, out, take certain actions. Once you get to the point of leveraging automations in SmartSuite, which is the layer of conducting things that need to happen at certain times, that's when you really start to see the power, as Patrick's touched on. If you are the person that cares about process and flow and creating consistencies in your organization, it really doesn't even matter what function. But what you're describing there, Cameron, or in your coming from a SaaS sales background, salespeople operate really well out of SmartSuite.
Yeah. I think another part of of their question there, it just moved on my screen, was why would you choose SmartSuite over having it built in-house? And I definitely have some opinions on this I'd like to share. This no-code movement, of which SmartSuite is a leader in this space, is built for what we call citizen developers, meaning that anyone can build solutions. This is a bit of a double-edged sword that I think we have to give some attention to, just in the nature or in the concept of being fully transparent. There's very often some pushback from IT departments that say, hey, wait a second, we're the guys who build the stuff. What do you mean you built it yourself, sales guy? You don't know how to build software. That's my job. So we start to see that, especially in larger organizations, when somebody comes in, generally on the marketing team, maybe on the operations or finance team, and they say, I need to build a custom solution. I'm going to pick up SmartSuite and build it. And before you know it, IT starts getting involved and saying, what are you doing? This is our job. And this is, I think, an interesting dynamic that's playing out just in the workforce in general, as no code continues to become more prevalent, and obviously with that SmartSuite. And I think the answer here, and the reason for it, is, look, we're not trying to replace IT by any means. The fact of the matter is, if you want to build custom software that is specific to your organization, if that's what your organization does and where they want to spend their resources, go for it. I'm not meaning to say that there's not value in that. What I am saying is, nobody knows your specific process, your department's process, better than you. And if you could stand up a solution in a day or even a couple of weeks versus sending it to IT and spending 10 times as long and 10 times as much money developing that tool, then that's a no-brainer, right? So I think that's where the value add comes in, is for people who are looking to bring quick results and build something that is ultimately scalable, and also to have control over that process themselves and not be reliant on the delays that might be caused by bringing in a tech team to build that. I hope that makes sense. But yeah, if you guys have follow-on questions on that, please let me know.
Awesome. All right. Yeah, keep the questions coming, folks. And then Patrick with a great comment as well, just around when you have this type of setup, when you're adding automations on top. So you have set your structure, you have your data in, you're relating your data, you're assigning key pieces of data to people. Adding that automation layer, you go beyond having a software with features, and now you have a living organism that can do multiple complete processes at scale.
True.
That's exactly it, which is taking some of the manual work that folks probably don't have to be doing. And instead, we say this all the time internally, what could you be prioritizing your time with? Could there be more thoughtful, impactful work that you have your teams, your people doing, as opposed to manual, repetitive tasks? The answer is yes, there is. Great. Anything else that you were planning to share here, Gareth?
I don't want to just chat for the sake of chatting, but there is something I'd like to go a little bit deeper into since we have the time. And it really comes down to this planning process. I stood up a really simple example in the interest of time, but ultimately, this is, I think, one of those key components that, number one, is our secret sauce as a consulting firm. And I'm very open about that. I say secret sauce, but it's one of those things that I think a lot of folks want to skip because they just want to start building. And I've come from a builder's background too. I want to build stuff, but I want to reiterate with everybody that the value of planning cannot be overlooked. There's an expression, and I'm going to butcher it because I'm bad with colloquialisms, but it's something along the lines of, if you gave me 8 hours to cut down a tree, I'd spend the first 6 sharpening my axe, or something like that. This all really speaks to planning, right? The idea of getting your arms around what it is that you want this tool to do, and especially when, and obviously this is the topic of our chat here today, when you're working across multiple departments, this becomes a bit more difficult. And this is, again, where I think SmartSuite really shines, because you can come in and say, this information, I should visually display, this information is coming from or is being worked on within a specific department. And then when we move further into the process, there's a different department that's doing different things with different data. But there is shared data as well. So understanding what that shared data is, and I'm realizing I'm probably so zoomed out, you can't even see my screen, but understanding what that shared data is the key component, right? Now, this was a high-level example and not fully fleshed out. But if we were working on an actual project here and not just standing up something quickly for an hour-long webinar, we would have taken a lot more, or been a lot more diligent about mapping out what information is being collected and what information is being shared with the various departments. And this is going to be a key piece to any building that you do, whether you're doing it internally or you're working with a team like ours, because the information is going to dictate the data schema, which is a fancy way of saying what you build and how you build it. So we need to understand what that information is and how it's being shared and who has access to what before we start building. I hope that is inspiring and maybe helps you think or frame how you might be getting worked on or getting started with your next project. I strongly recommend that anything that you're building, even if it seems like a simple, quick thing that you're going to stand up, always start with the planning process. You can get as complicated on this as you want, but I think it's an overlooked component. Yeah. Again, I don't want to ramble on for the sake of rambling, but Rick, I'd love to get your feedback on that too, especially in terms of what you've seen people who are building their own stuff doing. Because I'm working with folks largely who come to us saying, I'm stuck. I tried to build it and I got so far and now I'm hitting my head against the wall. So what are you seeing from your side of things?
I echo that exact same point. It's monopoly. Go back to go. Do not collect $200. We hear from customers all the time. Here's what I'm looking to build. Here's what we want. And maybe it's 50-50. Half the time, folks have taken a crack at mapping out that process, or they have it stored up in the old brain box and they can articulate it to us. And other times folks say, they take it as a call to action. That, okay, that's great. I'm going to step back. I have other stakeholders that are involved here. Let us map this out. I don't care if it's on a yellow legal pad. I don't care if it's Canva is a fantastic tool to do this in, a Figma, name your tool of choice. The point is just getting down the processes and what needs to happen. It could be simple. I've also seen some process flows that are next level. This person does this here and these happen. Regardless of how complex it is, you can't build in any solution unless you actually know your backbone of your process. Really important to get this out. So I can't say yes enough here. Absolutely the case. And the interesting thing is, as many folks here that I know have been longtime customers of ours can attest to, once you've mapped out the process, translating it into SmartSuite is not that tough. Right?
Yeah.
So
I'll echo that. I don't mean to interrupt you, but sometimes I think that the way that we get paid when we're developing a project is disproportionate to the effort. Like all the effort is in the planning and everybody wants to pay for the development. And I'm like, but all the work happened up front and you barely paid anything for that plan. And then you're paying us a lot of money for the development when that's the easy lifting in some cases.
Yeah. That's a funny way to think about it, but true. The two things up front before you engage in any sort of process improvement. Number one, map out the process as it is. And two, and this is maybe like a 1B, is consider what process you might want, what tweaks. So maybe you can't enable those right now, but hey, it would be great if we took process A and turned it into process B. So like aspirational state, current state, and depending on where you're at and your capabilities, then bringing that into SmartSuite, you might lay somewhere on the scale there, but it's probably going to be closer to that aspirational side of it, where you're finding efficiencies along the way.
100%.
Cool. Chris has a really good one in here, which is, so he says, kudos on a great webinar, as expected, Gareth. Considering the cross-team functionality of SmartSuite, and this is a great North Star here, Chris, can you touch on the My Work feature and how that supports cross-team workflows?
Thanks, Chris. Did you guys pay him for that question? That's such a layup. For anybody who's new to SmartSuite or maybe just new to the My Work section, this is a fabulous question. It's honestly one of my favorite features. that I didn't think we'd have time to highlight, but thank you. I'm going to flip into start items really quickly into my production here. And you'll see that I have my tasks. And I didn't actually assign this to anybody, but I have access here to assign to people within our workspace. And more specifically, I can also apply filters to say only specific teams, for example. Maybe the operations team is the team that I want to bring in here, right? So I could say, hey, only operations team members can be added to these tasks inside of our projects. Again, another key takeaway of operations. Once these tasks have been added, now I've apparently don't have anybody in my operations team, so let me turn that off. Once those tasks have been added to somebody's workflow, in this case, I'll pick on myself so that my actual team members don't get pinged all over the place. These things are now going to show up in a section of SmartSuite called My Work. And let me go ahead and throw some due dates in here. This will be due on Friday, and this one will be due yesterday. Oh, I'm in trouble. If I go up here to the upper right corner, I've got this area called My Work. And this is why I'm laughing at Chris's question being such a layup. This is an awesome question. All of my stuff, all of the tasks assigned to me across all of my different solutions are in one place. So here, obviously, I'm in way too many solutions, and I would be going cross-eyed if I had to go into each one of these places to get my work done. My work consolidates all of that information into this one panel, and I have everything I need. So I can just drill into this, and I can see those tasks that was it project tracking? No, it's called production. Let's find it. Not showing up here. Maybe it hasn't registered quite yet that it's been assigned to me. But all of that information will consolidate here, and I'll be able to see it. So here's just another example of a different solution where I've got something that was due 23 days ago. I'm in trouble, but I can manage all of my stuff right here from my work. And this is a key feature that allows me to work better across all these various teams, because again, if I'm on the finance team or the operations team and I have access to multiple different solutions where I'm getting things assigned to me, work is being assigned to me at different stages, I see all of it consolidated here, all of my open assignments across all the different solutions. So yeah, it also allows us to share things with people and communicate and collaborate right inside of this. And by the way, if I wasn't exactly sure what this is a demo. So no, I'm not actually 56 days overdue. Please don't think that I'm quite that behind, but I can actually open this up and be taken right to this record for this example, just like that, right? I don't even have to get into that solution. So this just gives me faster navigation within the tool and just unlocks next level productivity, if you ask me. Thanks for the layup, Chris. I think that's a key feature. And one of the reasons that I think SmartSuite really bridges the gap between being a database and like a project management software, right? It allows us to just have this additional layer of clarity with what we need to do in order to move the ball forward.
Love that. There's one other that I'll tend to get some eyebrow raises on, not directly related to my work, but similar-ish. If you are operating across functions, meaning let's say you're in an operations role where you're working with the sales team and the marketing team, something like that, there are likely different solutions that you're operating out of. There are likely many views within those where you slice and dice the data. For some reason, this gets overlooked, even for folks that have been using SmartSuite for a while. But if you just click on next to the grid view, the star in this particular view, and show how you can go back and tap into, your start items. So to the left, right, where you have this grid view all the way to the left.
Oh, you want me over here?
Yeah, sorry. Should have been more descriptive. So when you're starring a view or a solution or something of that sort and calling it a favorite, a start item, essentially, you then have quick access to go back and forth. So if you're commonly going into, let's say, your CRM for something, and then the next flow is you're jumping into the marketing team's content production, and then you're jumping into an inventory tracking, making up solutions. Instead of feeling the need to bookmark a whole bunch of these in your Chrome browser or have a folder with a whole bunch of these in, take the easy route, which is star these items and just jump back and forth seamlessly between them.
Yeah, I did a bad job of labeling these for our example, but let's call this view star one, right? Here in my project tasks, that's what's showing up right here, right? And if I were in one of my other, let's say I bridged across multiple departments, I was in billing as well, and I wanted to quickly go over here, and we'll call this star 2 just so that we can differentiate the names. Once I'm happy with that, I'll just star it. And now to Rick's point, it's showing up right here, right? I can also pin these to the top of the list, which I did in preparation for our chat here today. So I could flip between the solutions, but to Rick's point, I can pin or star the specific view as well, so that I'm taken exactly to what I need to see inside of that solution. Yeah, thank you for that.
Excellent. All right, folks, we're coming up on time here. Perhaps time for one, maybe 2 more questions. If not, you can follow up with us after the fact, anything that's on your mind, anything you want to discuss privately. And of course, as always, this recording will be sent out to anyone who attended. And for those folks listening in that didn't see it live, we're here for you.
Definitely. Also, I know we often get questions about sharing stuff after the fact, anything that we showcased here today. This was all high-level example stuff, folks, but if you want access to this, please let the folks at SmartSuite know and we'll get it worked up. I would think that you'd be able to stand it up on your own pretty quickly, but if you want a shortcut, I'm happy to share with you. So just reach out. We'll get it to you.
Perfect. All right, well, everyone, thank you for investing some time with us today. Gareth, it's always a pleasure to do these sessions with you. I learn a ton every time you're just walking through the way you think about these things. Getting a lot of thanks and appreciation from the group here in the chat. And yeah, folks, let's be in touch as you're building. It's not meant to be a lonely journey. We have a community, we have office hours, and we have an incredible group of partners like Gareth that are here to help you in any way they can. All right.
100%.
Enjoy the rest of your days all. Take care.
Thanks, everyone.